Right. Now, Arab supremacism. Yeah, there was a history. Obviously, there was a history. That book, have I got it still here? It's over there now. But if you do want to go through that, if you're interested in learning about Arab history, that book, I can't recommend it enough. Arab's a 3,000-year history. There was something. Look, in the past, the way the history of Islam kind of unfolded, you had the Prophet's time, and then after the Prophet's time, you see, Muslims, they weren't, it's not like that they weren't ready, but it's that they, in my understanding, had no idea, or even that doesn't really do it justice. I think, you see, what it is that if you take up the people, the companions, and where Islam came, it was a very humble origin. People who lived in a desert, who lived in the Hijaz, they weren't really on a map worldwide. They weren't. So, you see, within decades, this became a global enterprise. That, you know, decades are not actually that long when you think about it. Within a natural human lifetime. A natural. So let's say a child was born in the time of the Prophet. Let's take Abdullah ibn Zubayr as an example. He was the first boy to be born in Medina. He passes away, I believe it's 72, 73 Hijri, around that time. So within his natural lifetime, by the time he's passed away, Islam is a global empire. The not only Muslims, but if we're going to go a layer deeper or closer to the roots, Arabs had come an incredibly far way. I mean, the journey had taken them to great distances, and namely Quraysh, you see, more than anything else. And when we say Quraysh were truly, I mean, even till today, if you're going to look at, let's say one looks at Muslims as a case study, an anthropological case study, Quraysh till today, if we're looking at them from an evolution perspective, have, you know, made huge, I mean, astronomical strides in survival. Even till today, Quraysh are given a different plateau. Like Sayyids, all this Sayyid thing that goes on today. It's just Quraysh, isn't it? What else is it? You know, it's... And if one was to think that they really did come a long way, you know, from a purely evolutionary perspective. If you're just looking at this devoid of religion and just from an evolutionary anthropological perspective, the tribe of Quraysh has, you know, has been incredibly successful. I mean, in its early stages as the Bani Umayyah and the Abbasids, and then the Abbasids, and even then coming right through. I mean, I know you've had the Ottomans, but still, you know, the Sayyid kind of status, and then till today, this whole thing of Shurafa and Sadat. So I feel that's an interesting perspective. The thing about Arabs' supremacy, this did happen, definitely happened, definitely. Unquestionably through the time of Bani Umayyah, that there was this Arab, it was a very pure Arab thing in the time of Bani Umayyah, and non-Arabs were not really, I mean, they were okay, that they didn't, I mean, they wouldn't necessarily oppress you for being a non-Arab, but they wouldn't give you importance either. That said, they wouldn't even give importance to other Arabs. So the interesting thing is, if you look at the whole Mawali culture, so in the time of Bani Umayyah, of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan and these people, when they started to create new cities like Wasit in modern day Iraq, these cities, they would have them inhabited by people, and what they start, because a lot of new Muslims and people started to move in who were Persians or spoke other languages, they banned any other language in certain cities, that you must only speak Arabic. And then in cities like Wasit and in certain other towns, they actually banned that you could not live there unless you were an Arab, or you had to affiliate with a tribe. Hence, you got a lot of this wala, these mawali later on. A lot of them weren't actually slaves. You know, you get this assumption that a freed slave had wala. So for example, I was, I don't know, let's say I was enslaved now by some tribe of, let's say, as a slave to somebody who belonged to the tribe of Tamim. Now, when I became free, I would carry the name sometimes At-Tamimi. They call that wala in Arabic. But you will see all the people had this wala. Most of the people had this wala in their nasab, in their lineage. It didn't mean all of them were slaves. It was that they imposed these rules of citizenship. That if you wish to live here, you must have wala with one of the Arab tribes. You must carry their name. So a lot of the non-Arabs began doing that. And you see this kind of strong Arab supremacy in early Abbasid culture as well. And then it starts to wear down. Because the Abbasids really, you see, what they did was they realized that in order to move forward, we need these non-Arabs, and they needed structures there. So a lot of the administrative structures came from the Persians and from the Turks and from all these other and by Turks I don't mean modern day Turks, but obviously they are still part of the Turkic people, but the original, I suppose even today the Turks are originally from like the Turkic people, the Turkmen, perhaps by Mongolia or that part of perhaps China or Russia today, that came down. So Turkish people even today are not originally from, I mean, maybe they've mixed in, but they're not originally from the Middle East. Their language is not related to any language in the Middle East. It's related to just the Turkic languages, which is, you know, either very far eastern, Western Asia, or like parts of maybe modern day China and things like that. So, and I'll tell you a story actually. There's a brief summary. I'll go into it in more detail on another occasion, but there's this legacy and a whole narrative of the early Abbasids and their relationship with the Persians. So there was this family known as the Baramikah, okay? And those of you that are familiar with Sham, with modern day Damascus, so when I studied in Damascus in the late 90s, early 2000s, there's a place there called Baramikah. It's in, I mean, it's not central Damascus, but it's towards there. I mean, people will know where it is if they know Damascus. It's where they had all the passport offices and things like this. So Baramikah, what they call it today, is named after the Baramikah. And the Baramikah were these people, this Persian family in the time of Harun Rashid. And when Harun Rashid was growing up, there was this, they were the descendants of this Zoroastrian priest called Burmuk or Barmak. Now Barmak was somebody who served a kind of official position within the Sassanid Empire, the Persian Empire. So he was familiar with administrative structures. So when the Abbasids took over, he also, whether he converted to Islam, some people, you know, that's discussable or debatable, and his children definitely converted to Islam. And they were very familiar with the administrative structures, and they were brought in by Bani Umayyah, by Bani Abbas. And because of the way they knew how to organize these kind of registers and set things up and have different departments and ministries, and so because they did that with the Sassanids, and the Sasanian Empire was an empire that spanned an incredible length of time, so they had a wealth of experience. So so you have Yahya al-Barmaki, and then he has children. You've got people like Ja'far al-Barmaki and these other there's many their kind of offspring and cousins. They become so close with the caliph, and that they have access to his palaces. They walk in, walk out. They are like family. They grew up. I mean, they help him against coups, military coups. They save his life on several occasions. They were very, very tight with Harun Rashid, and especially Ja'far al-Barmaki. He had such a bond with Harun Rashid that, I mean, it was borderline. Was it even? One questions whether it was homosexual. I mean, it was such a tight bond that they would do things like they would do crazy stuff, like both wear one long thobe, one kind of shirt. I don't know what kind of brotherly love was going on there, but they would wear like one kameez, both of them, as in at the same time. What is this? Both of them penetrating this this shirt. So they would wear this shirt and they would just walk around in the palace and in his room, and they had this strange brotherly love going on, this one. And he was so tight with Harun Rashid, was the caliph, with Ja'far al-Barmaki, and he was like, I mean, he was like of a similar age, grown up together. But then you had the whole this whole family, Alu Barmak, which was like, there were so many children and their children and cousins, and they were all in administrative positions and positions of power. And then, just like that, one night, Harun al-Rashid sets up a series of events that came to be known as Nakbatul Baramikah, the tragedy of the Baramikah. And in that night, he wipes them out one by one. Seriously, it's a very stoic and brutal tale of love, friendship, brotherhood, and betrayal. It's just amazing, and it's overwhelming, when you go through it. It's all done within this night. He has one or two of them that were the top, like Yahya al-Barmaki and one, two others who was the fatherly kind of figure, has them put under persistent home arrest. So they kind of arrested, and then they put in some held in captives till they die. But most of them, he has them all killed off, and nobody's quite sure why he did it. And it's amazing, the sudden turn of events, as the kind of how tragedy befalls suddenly. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامِ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Allah, Allah, Allah. That there's, what's that? सुबह के तख्त नशीं शाम को मुजरिम ठहरे, हमने पल भर में तख्तों को बदलते देखा, नसीबों को बदलते देखा. Right, so as in, there's a poem that that people who were on thrones, by nightfall they were wanted criminals. That within moments we saw the destinies of people change. That such is this dunya, people, such is this dunya. But yeah, it's a tragic, if you're ever interested and you have a bit of time, read up and check out this Nakbatul Baramikah. It's always a great tale, and it's part and parcel of Muslim history now. Why Harun Rashid did that, some people feel it's because he felt that they were encroaching upon his power. I think that may have had some truth. Some people said it's because Ja'far was destined to marry his sister, it was Harun Rashid who set it up. He was to marry Harun Rashid's sister. I think her name was Abbasa or something, and everything seemed good, and he's the one who set it up. And some people say he couldn't take it, the thought of this non-Arab marrying his sister. But I don't know if that's actually how much sense that makes, because he was incredibly close with Ja'far. It wasn't, and then he had him killed. This love, as somebody said, ye jo rishte hain, ye khoon baha kar hi khatam hote hain. These relationships can only be set free by releasing blood. Well, that's some fascinating aspects of Muslim history. Right, so what's going on? Let's take a look at some questions, people. Somebody said any stories about... Let's leave some stories for now. That's enough. The Nakbatul Baramikah. You could make an amazing series, seriously, just out of the Nakbatul Baramikah. Allah. And it would be a bestseller.